been asked to talk about the history of the EarthScope E&O program, and it's, again, hard to do all of this in a few minutes, so I'll be choosing just a few examples, and I apologize in advance for those of you who don't use your examples, because this is very much a community enterprise. But I do want to just list some of the people. I thank all the facilities, the various offices, also all the PIs, both specifically doing education outreach, but also doing research and broader impacts, all the landowners, and then the one person I want to additionally mention is Michelle Hall, who helped really drive this project from the very beginning. So I'll go through some of the challenges, a little bit about the history, then the mission and goals that came out of the original plan, and then some examples, and then some of the lessons learned, and some ideas for the future. So the challenges for E&O are very similar to the challenges that have been listed for the facility, other parts of the facility. It's coordinating across this huge distributed facility. But it also has a real advantage that you have a local involvement and engagement. So for education, for outreach, it means we have connections in lots of different communities. The decadal time scale is, again, valuable because we can build a structure, but then, of course, there's also having to try to maintain that structure over time. And also, we have to really adapt to changing technology. You've seen some of the other pictures about how much technology has changed since EarthScope got started. In the case of E&O, you have to remember there were no smartphones, there were no iPads, no social media, not even Google Maps. And in fact, if you even had an iPod, you were an incredibly early adopter. So one thing we want to do is also then, one of the challenges is to promote earth science as a high-tech discipline. A lot of you probably know that in middle school and high school, earth science gets taught sometimes as, here are a couple rocks to memorize. And students don't even realize how high-tech the discipline is. So really that was part of the challenges, really show what's really going on in geoscience. So as Anne mentioned earlier, E&O was considered part of EarthScope from the very beginning, but there was the challenge that the MREFC did not allow any actual education and outreach as part of the building up of the facility. So that meant that we had to have a separate proposal to fund E&O. But we were able to sneak in some siting outreach into US Array because we said that was an important part of being able to actually find the sites. And I'll come back to that later. So you've seen in some of the earlier histories that 2002 was when there was the first planning workshop for E&O. And it was really about what could be accomplished, and then what should the structure be for this big project, and where to host it. And then put this in context, at the time, Iris E&O was 1.5 people, and it was really brand new. UNAVCO didn't yet have a formal program, though people were doing E&O. So obviously people were doing various outreach, education activities, but there really was very little formal going on in the community yet. So that from that workshop resulted in the Education Outreach Network plan, the EON plan. And what was decided is really there ought to be a separate EarthScope E&O office. It really needed to be independent, so it really was focusing on EarthScope E&O. But then it was going to have to really be a collaboration and close cooperation with lots and lots with the facilities and many local and regional partners. So I've just listed not in universities, but just a lot of the various groups that were seen from the beginning to be involved. And then I also point out that the plan, the EON plan, the idea here was this was added above and would illuminate all the other parts of EarthScope. So from the beginning, the idea was it would help tie together the parts of EarthScope and let people know about it. So the history for E&O, with the first E&O proposal was funded then in 2004, and it was a full-time position that was based in the original facility office. Those who may remember that before there were national offices, there was a facility office that was based in Washington, D.C. And then about the same time, the EarthScope, or the UNAVCO E&O program got started. And then it transitioned then to the first national office in 2007, where there was a clear E&O role in that office, where they initiated, for example, the interpretive workshops that I'll mention again later. And then 2011, Arizona State took on the second national office, and the E&O role there was expanded even further. So the plan that came out of the original workshop, the EON plan, had a mission to really to make a measurable and lasting change in how earth science is taught and perceived in the United States. So a very big mission. And I'll come back to the hard part is deciding how do you know if you've achieved that mission. So it lists 5 goals. It's creating an identity for EarthScope, having informal education, formal education, fostering the use of data and technology, and then helping to establish the community ownership. So I'm going to step through each one. But first, then the audiences, or the public, we had to decide what were the audiences. What's general public, it's the formal education again, informal, and the various partners, and then technical and other specialists, other professionals, including the media. So I can't do an E&O talk, a historical E&O talk, without showing Bob Lilly's pyramid. For those of you who've seen Bob give a talk, this pyramid always has to be in the talk. He turned it over later on to make it the other way around, so he said it was storing up instead of coming down from the top, but this is more the historical version. So the idea is you start with EarthScope Science, you then have which then leads to the discoveries and their meanings, and you have the scientists, you have the PIs at the top with the students and the general public at the bottom. And so then you have formal learning on one side, and then you have informal learning on the other side with the park interpreters, and then you also can add in the educators and the media. So this is how you propagate the science out to students and the public. So now I'll just go through briefly just some examples for each of the goals. So for example, for the identity, there's Insight, which has been more for the science community, On-Site, which has been designed for the landowners, lots of other publications that are designed for students, posters, and then I'll come back a little bit more to the media. Then the speaker series have been very successful. Over almost 25 or 24 speakers have given almost 100 presentations. And then visits to the sites when possible. For example, just recently, and now that US Array is in the East Coast, brought out people from a variety of agencies in DC to show them here's what EarthScope is about. So just some examples from the national media just recently. My favorite, though, which Ann also showed, is that Popular Science said that EarthScope was the most awesome experiment in the universe. Now, maybe that was slight hyperbole, but if we won the war, this is against all the major physics experiments. So if we're the most awesome experiment in the world, then that means we really ought to be able to really generate excitement amongst the general public. And going forward, we would like to see if we can equal that again for the next big thing. So for science literacy, for informal education, I mentioned that interpretive workshops were developed to work with park professionals. They've been running from all the way across the country, starting in Cascadia. They've been across to Charleston, and they'll be going on to other places. And Steve will talk about that probably tomorrow. We've had science cafes, of course, the website, and then YouTube has become very important, social media. I think, again, Steve will talk about that tomorrow. And public displays. And that's just one example. The Active Earth Monitor has been something that's been very much a joint project between UNAVCO, the EarthScope National Office, IRIS, and other groups. And we have now content sets for various places where EarthScope has been or will be. And just one small example, we also loan out some kiosks, and we have almost 3 million visitors just from our loan kiosks. And we have a Highway West area. So for those who don't know, if you're traveling on Interstate 55, I think it is, in Missouri, if you need to stop at a rest area, well, there's a rest area that's all earthquake themed, and it teaches you about EarthScope. In terms of formal education, there's been a lot of professional development. Some of the biggest projects have been the Teachers on the Leading Edge with led by Bob Butler, and they've now been funded again on CT. I forget what the words are, but it's similar again, working with teachers in the Pacific Northwest. A number of other PI projects. Then also PBO and US Array and the National Office have worked together for workshops. And also we do smaller workshops in national meetings like the National Science Teachers Association. We started getting EarthScope into textbooks a little bit. There are teachable moment slide sets that feature EarthScope, and seismographs in schools is one way to get equipment that stays in the ground even after the transportable way goes away. And then just some examples of the sort of products, the data products have been created to use in the classroom. And then for other ways of using data, one of the popular things has been UNAVCO's short course series on a whole variety of topics for researchers. US Array has also done courses for, and will be doing more courses for grad students and postdocs. Webinars have become much more popular. That's a fairly new thing, but again, it's reaching the grad students' early career. And then a lot of animations and visualizations. And I'm sure you've all seen the US Array ground motion visualizations, but there's also a lot of other animations that have been built on lots of different earth science topics. ETS, for example, and also lots of other groups have done animations that I'm not showing. And then for community ownership, we've been trying to work with diverse audiences. So it's things like ASU's worked with the Native American groups, particularly when the TA was there. SACNAS, which was the Society for the Advancement of Chicanos and Native Americans in Science, is an annual workshop where we run field trips. Videos have become more and more popular, and this is both individuals creating their own videos, putting them on YouTube, but also then a number of professional videos have been funded through the EarthScope program. The EarthScope booth brings in the community to be involved with telling others about EarthScope, as well as then people who haven't heard of EarthScope get to see it. And then one of the big ways we brought the university community in is through US Ray Sighting, which I'm sure you probably most of you all heard of, but this is the final result across the US, where there have been over 50 institutions involved with finding the sites for the transportable array, with over 135 students. And they found almost 1,400 of the sites where the students who spent their summers, or part of their summers, going out, talking to landowners, and selecting the sites which were eventually then used for the transportable array. So if you look through there, you can see all. I mean, I think most of these institutions are part of either IRIS or UNAVCO. Some aren't, but we're also still interested in being involved. And what this achieved was also then there was a local connection, and so there was a lot of media. This way through the universities could get their local media to talk about what their universities were doing. So what are some lessons learned? Well, first, we really do need to look at specific products for targeted audiences. That's maybe the hardest thing because there are so many good ideas. People have lots and lots of ideas. You have to somehow keep it narrowed down. Probably the thing that's been hardest for us is defining the impact. Because you have to decide, really you should decide from the beginning what you want to measure. And that means including evaluation from the beginning. Because, for example, you could say, well, have we been successful when we found out that someone stopped someone wearing an EarthScope t-shirt in a grocery store because they had just seen this great story about EarthScope, this actually happened. They saw the special on TV about EarthScope. They saw the t-shirt. They wanted to learn more. So that's a wonderful anecdote, but how do you define nationwide what sort of impact you've actually had? It is a full-time effort. You have to have some people who are involved all the time doing your education outreach. They're looking at the bigger picture, but you also have to have close collaboration with lots and lots of partners. And then certainly the distribution of the facility has allowed us to create local connections, and I think that's been very important because that's really people care about things locally. So that's really allowed both landowners, the schools, and the media could all work at a local level as well as a national level. And then finally, in terms of lessons learned, it really is you have to tell the story, not just tell the facts. And that's maybe the most important thing that at least I've been learning is it's all about telling the stories so that because people react to stories, not just scientific facts. So for the future, first I say there's a lot of E&O that's left for EarthScope as planned, because we really can still reach a lot of the Northeast population. We can also we can keep a lot of public interest across the US because we're going to be getting more and more science results over time. And we even can keep going back and connecting with the landowners. So they can be our local connections, even though the instruments might not be there in some cases. We have a great opportunity with the next generation science standards. I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but there's now going to be a new set of science standards at the K-12 level. And Michael Weissession was very much involved in creating these standards, and he's helped to really make earth science a much greater part of it. So there's things in there that will tie almost directly for EarthScope, and so we have the chance of building things in right from the beginning where teachers need activities that fit in these standards. We also, coming up with going to Alaska, we've got a unique opportunity there, including with the 50th anniversary of the '64 earthquake. We have a great chance to engage that audience. So then finally, and just for the future, for the next big thing, I'd say you really need a bold, flexible plan, but then you also need to do a limited number of activities well. I think maybe we have probably tried to stretch a little too broadly. Really you need to, again, focus on what it is you're going to do. You need to be able to incorporate the new technologies, new social interactions, because who knows what it's going to be 5 years from now. Also then, it's very much a shared responsibility between the educators and researchers. I think maybe that's the most important part. You really need the involvement of the researchers because the public likes to hear from scientists. Now, some surveys will show that as little as 4% of the American public can name a living scientist. So they may be interested in hearing from scientists. Almost none of them think they've ever met one. So this is our opportunity to change that. And then finally, we need to target a wider science community as well as the general public. And by that I mean we really need to be able to target the physicists and the astronomers to show that what the science we're doing is at least as exciting as the science that they're doing. So thank you.